So it's probably a great game for teachers to show their kids.
Do you want to find out how Hikaru got his knight to d6, having sacrificed the rook on a1? Do you want to find out how one monster got replaced by another monster on d6? Do you want to find out how the white attack continued from this formidable position of two bishops facing the black king? Then stay tuned. Welcome to William's Chess Channel. This game is between Hikaru Nakamura and Eduardo Ituruziga. This is what Hikaru said of his game.
Got killed on the king side by the queen, the knight, and the bishop. So yeah, I very much a theme and a motif from the game to be able to sack the exchange and then just attack on the king side. And I mean, it turns out just to be very strong. So it's probably a great game for teachers to show their kids.
d4, knight f6, c4, e6, knight f3, b6, queen's Indian, g3, bishop b7, bishop g2, bishop e7, castle, castle, rook e1. Interesting. They played 2 years ago in the exact same opening at the exact same tournament. Nakamura deviates first with rook e1. 2 years ago, Hikaru played knight c3 at the same tournament, Gibraltar. Knight e4, bishop d2, bishop f6, rook c1, d6, d5, and a totally different middle game ensued. Knight takes d2, knight takes d2, e5, b4, a5, a3. Back to the game. Rook e1, queen c8. I now understand this move, having gone through a variation. 10-minute think, sending Hikaru into a 15-minute think. They just want to get each other out of preparation as soon as possible. d6 was possible, and if knight c3, knight e4 is not actually a good move because white has a nice tactical shot, beginning with knight g5. Now you might think after knight takes c3, black is doing good because if you take the knight, bishop takes, king takes, bishop g5, you are down a piece. But in chess, the best moves in chess are the intermezzos, the beautiful in-between moves. Here, white can play the stunning queen c2.
Brilliant.
A lot of people have fallen for this opening trap. 37 games in the Chess24 database. If knight takes e2 check, rook takes e2, bishop takes g5, now you can play bishop takes b7. There's no time to defend against mate, so you might as well take the knight. But in taking the knight, you will lose the exchange. Bishop takes b7, bishop takes c1, you can grab your rook, black keeps the bishop, and then white keeps his bishop, and white is winning. Back to the game. Queen c8 was played. And after knight c3, knight e4 is now possible. You have to play something else here. Knight g5 does not work, so Hikaru chose bishop f4. Bishop d2 is also possible, with ideas of just putting the rook on c1 very quickly. If d5, you can take and then rook c1. If d6, then d5. Knight takes d2, knight takes d2, e5, and then e4, which was very similar to their game 2 years ago. Back to the game. Bishop f4 was chosen, allowing doubled pawns. 21-minute think by Eduardo, and after take, bishop e4. This move is important. Black chooses to put his piece on the e4 square in order to stop white playing e4 himself. For example, if d6, then e4, white already has a big position. Bishop f1 was chosen. A typical plan in these structures. You want to keep the bishop pair and get a big pawn center. If bishop takes f3, e takes f3, yes, white has doubled pawns, but white has the potential for a big kingside attack. d6, bishop d3. It has a new diagonal. Eduardo chose bishop d6, trying to swap a pair of bishops. Hikaru puts the bishop back on c1, 8-minute think. He chose to retreat, but can you take after take and knight d2? Bishop b7, e4, yes, white does get the center, but the attacking potential is minimized. White doesn't have the bishop pair anymore. Hence, I believe bishop c1 is a good practical decision. Also, it makes the game more interesting if you keep the bishop pair on. c5, 20-minute think by Eduardo. Very committal move. Notice in the last 5 moves, Eduardo has spent 67 minutes. Ouch. Time is ticking away. d5, blocking the diagonal, and now black only has one diagonal for the e4 bishop. It can go back to g6, it can even go back to h7. Take, take, rook e8, c4, queen a6. The queen has to get into the game somehow. If black now gives up the bishop pair with e takes and then bishop e5, rook b1, d6. White still has a big position, bishop d3, just like in the previous line. The bishop gets a new diagonal, g6, bishop d2, and starting a nice kingside attack. f4, f5, h4, h5, maybe king g2 first, just to stop the black queen coming to h3. And white has all the central squares covered. Back to the game. After c4, queen a6, knight d2, Hikaru spent 15 minutes on this move. But why? It looks very logical. And here it is because bishop e5. This is why. What does Hikaru now have in mind? The two bishops look very strong, but in return, white will get a monster. And you saw this monster in the intro to this video. Knight takes e4, bishop takes a1, knight d6. If you are enjoying the video so far, why not leave a like to this video and subscribe to the channel at the same time. Back to the game. Knight d6, a good practical decision. The queen, rook and knight are offside. They are not likely to get into the game soon. Rook f8, e4, big center, bishop e5. Eduardo tries to get rid of this monster, but Hikaru anticipates this and intends to replace it with another monster. Bishop f4, boom. After bishop takes d6, bishop takes d6, the perfect bishop, you could say. After rook e8, e5. One perfect bishop, let the other bishop come into the game to d3, and we have two perfectly placed bishops. Queen takes a2, rook e4. A typical kingside rook lift. The rook will go to g4, the rook will go to h4, the queen will come to g4, queen to h5, bishop d3. Fantastic attacking opportunities.
This is fun.
It is fun.
White is taking over. Knight a6, rook g4. g7 pawn is weak. Queen b2, and now Hikaru crashes through. But was there another way to defend? Queen a3 makes sense. You are stopping the white queen coming to f3. So queen a3 looks like a good defensive try, but white does not have to go to f3. The white queen can swing to another square. Starting with queen d2, you can go to g5, you can go to h6 and try and crash through. If queen f3, queen g5, g6, now what? The switch. The g file is not working, so go to the h file. Rook h4 with queen h6 next. h5, weakening the king, and now switch back. Rook f4, coming into the f file. Queen c3. Queen f6, rook f8 is possible, but let's just open up the king side, starting with g4. The pawns are weak. h4 trying to lock it up, and now queen f6, rook f8. All these squares are so weak. The queen is controlling both of them. Let's just bring the rook back into the game. But what has changed? The g pawn is in the way. Just push it forward. g5. Rook takes h4, rook f8, checkmate. Thank you very much. After rook g4, queen b2 was a mistake by Eduardo, but practically this position is so difficult to defend. I would say almost impossible to defend for a human being. Queen f3, planning to go queen f6, hitting the g7 pawn. Knight b4, queen f6, g6, h4. Similar to the variation, white needs to open the g or the h file. h5, rook f4, rook f8, and now g4. Just like we saw before. And here Eduardo resigned, because after h takes g4, h5. If you don't touch it, h6 and queen g7 is checkmate. But if you do, by taking it, queen g5 check, mate in 3. King h8, queen takes h5, king, and now rook takes g4. Thank you very much. What a fantastic attacking game by Hikaru Nakamura. If you enjoyed this video, if you enjoyed seeing attacking chess games by a great player like Hikaru, then why not subscribe to this channel, but also like this video at the same time. Plus, check out all the other instructive chess videos I know you'll love too.